All right, welcome to our Friday, February 11th, 2022 meeting. Call to order, and I'm saying the pledge. Please stand. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, I'd like to have a couple of our newbies speak up here. We'll start with Jason down here.
Morning, everyone. Jason Andriotta. I'm the District Director for the Southeast District of the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Glad to be here.
Joe.
Good morning. I am Joe Flesher, your County Commissioner here in Indian River County. Although I've served 16 years to date, this is my very first meeting, as I am the alternate in this seat, and I hope I serve it as well as Susan Adams. Thank you.
All right, Jeff, we know. Jackie, we know. Chris, we know. So we're good to go.
We know that.
Yeah.
We are.
Okay. In the audience, do we have any elected officials? People of note? No?
Everybody's of note.
Everybody's of note. Okay, I should strike that. I didn't say that.
Yeah.
All right.
Mr.
Cannon?
Chair, I'm going to put a couple people on the spot because
Okay,
they
well, I
didn't.
just mentioned Jim.
Yeah, they didn't stand up.
Yeah.
So we have a couple people from the water management districts and also down in Martin County. So would you please, Jim, especially you, since you're brand new, just stand up, introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are, since you're representing about 2/3 of the counties on the lagoon, and then we'll go to Tom and then John. And also, Tom, you should stand up as well, one of our chairs. So go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate the introduction. My name is Jim Cannon. I'm the new intergovernmental coordinator for St. John's Water Management District out of the Palm Bay office. So I've had this roughly 2 months now. So I'm trying to get up to speed on all the various issues. Most of you I've met, and if I haven't, I will. And I look forward to working with all of you. Thanks. Good morning. I'm Tom Frick. Some of you may remember me when I was at DEP, but a few years ago I moved over to St. Johns River Water Management District, and currently I'm the Assistant Executive Director there. So it's a pleasure to be back and being in the audience, so I don't have to do the work that you guys do.
Perspective is a little different down there, isn't it?
Very, yes. I am John Mayle. I'm with Martin County. You usually have Diane Hughes here. She was unavailable, and as well as our commissioner, Stacey Hetherington, who sits on the board. She was not able to make it. She regrets that, but then our alternate, Commissioner Hurd, was very excited about coming, and then she had a family matter come up as well, and regrets that she couldn't make it. So you've got like the F team here today. I'll do my best to represent Martin County. I'm the Ecosystem Division Manager for Martin County, as well as currently the Legislative Coordinator.
Very good. Thank you for being here.
Mr. Chair, since we're introducing our staff, I have 2 new ones here today. Jim Lampert in our Water Quality Division and Courtney Calderon, who is in our grants section. We heard there's going to be some money talked about today, so I just want to make sure that I have the right people in the audience. So thank you for coming, guys.
Anyone else?
Bob, get up. We have quite a few people here that you know or work with us, and so, introduce yourself, Bob. Yeah.
No, the other Bob's standing behind you.
Bob Glasser, I'm the Senior Director of Environmental with the Canal Port Authority, and I believe I was just elected as Vice Chair of the Management Board.
Marcy?
I am Marcy Frick with Secchi Depth, and I have a continuing services contract with the NEP to help with the CCMP.
And I have one more that I'm going to introduce, Dr. John Windsor, who's sitting in the back, serves the Brevard County Citizen Oversight Committee on Sorrel, the Save Our Indian River Lagoon. But he was the backbone for like decades of this program in our STEM AC, back then called the Technical Advisory Committee. So we're really glad to have John with us.
Hey, Dwayne, you got me Tom stand up.
Yeah, Tom said that I have to stand up. He's already bossing me around. I'm Tom Carey. I'm with Volusia County. I am the Pollution Control and Water Quality Manager there. And I, as well, got elected to a position at the Management Board. I'm the new chair, so glad to serve.
Good deal. Well, thank all of you for being here. Okay, do we have any agenda revisions? Nothing? Okay. Resolutions?
No, not today.
Okay. Okay, well, do we have any cards for public comment? No, so we're moving right along. Okay, so we have election of officers. We need to elect a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary for calendar year 2022. So I will entertain any nominations.
Mr. Chair, we have kind of followed a certain pattern. Do we have that in-house as to how that has gone? It seems to work really well. I don't know if that's something you've thought about or if any of the others have thought about. I don't remember the rotation, but.
I can speak to that. So a number of years ago, I think it was the very first year we convened, we had a discussion. We have no policies or bylaws that direct you on your executive team. You basically can choose anybody you want, nominate anybody you want, elect anybody you want. There was a decision made to put that, executive team together with the 5 counties and then rotate through the counties to meet the intent of our reorganization, which was to empower our local governments to take a leadership role on the council board of directors. And so if you retain that process, what we've been doing is cycling through the 5 counties through the chair, vice chair, and secretary position. And if you decide to hold to that sequence, then Kurt Smith would ascend to the chair position from vice chair. Chris Sadowski would become the vice chair from secretary. Jeff Brower would become the secretary. And then, next year, we rotate through the 5 counties. And so that's how we've been doing it in the past.
Yeah, the discussion way back then was that we would provide for a succession of individuals so that it took the politics out of it and there wouldn't be any finger pointing or whatever. So it's worked out very smoothly.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
may I have the privilege of making motion of that recommended slate to this board?
Second, we have a motion for, can we do all 3 at one time?
Yes, you can.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr.
Everyone
Chair,
that's serving.
normally we would pass the gavel, but you already have the gavel.
We knew he was efficient, but geez.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have Stacy here. I was going to thank her for her service last year. Well, we'll do it in absentia. Thank you, Stacy, wherever you are. Okay, water quality reports. Dr. Jacoby.
Morning. So we're going to talk about the north and central Indian River Lagoon. Whoops. No, sorry. There. And the information we'll talk about come from these sounds, which are devices that are in the lagoon that record different kinds of parameters through time, telemeter those data in on a sort of hourly basis. So you can see they're distributed from Vero Beach up into Mosquito Lagoon. First off, salinities in the lagoon, again, have been not unusual. So if you think back to like around 2011 and so forth, we had really high salinities in parts of the lagoon up around 40. Seawater is about 35, so higher than the seawater in the Atlantic Ocean. Here you can see, if you look, that there are some high salinities up in Mosquito Lagoon, and that's a very shallow sort of place where you get a lot of evaporation, and so salinity can sit a little higher. Plus it has pretty good inflow from Ponce Inlet, so it doesn't tend to drop as much. You can see there was a drop in Banana River Lagoon. Again, as the rains come, you get the inflow of fresh water and the salinity drops. A couple of places where the salinity stayed fairly similar. You can also see Banana River Lagoon, track up after the rainfall tails off. And then lower salinities in places where you don't have the input of ocean water. But again, not typically unusual. Temperatures, we're ticking along, fairly warm, dropped down recently. Recent cold spells were sufficiently long to have the temperature drop. And that kind of cycles back to the manatees, and we'll touch on the manatees a little bit at the end. Chlorophyll levels have been actually pretty low in most places in the lagoon. So this is not in the measurement that we get from the laboratory. This is in what they call relative fluorescence units. They're proportional to each other, but they're not exactly the same. The rule of thumb is you sort of multiply these by 4, but that's a rule of thumb. So, but you can see a couple of places at Titusville, and then Cocoa is IRL I-13, where we had some chlorophyll spikes, as it were. So the biggest bloom was in that Cocoa area on the Indian River side. Dissolved oxygen, as you might expect, because the phytoplankton produce oxygen as a byproduct of their photosynthesis, tracks that, so you can see there are higher oxygen levels where they had higher chlorophyll levels. But overall, the oxygen levels are all good. So again, 2 milligrams per liter is where aquatic life gets stressed. And these are all at sort of 5 and above. So all in all, looking doing good. And in fact, the water clarity has been quite amazing. So it was a kind of a good year for that. In terms of the manatees, we've been following the water quality around this feeding site because people wanted to make sure that we weren't having an issue that was arising from putting matter into the lagoon. Provisioning began on the 20th of December. At that point, there were relatively few manatees. They were on the opposite side of this jetty from where the feeding was taking place, mostly. So they were offering about 20 to 30 pounds of lettuce a day, and they weren't really getting much in the way of takers. On the 20th of January, partly because the power plant, to meet their permit, had to turn on their auxiliary heaters, they were releasing warm water on the side of the jetty where the feeding was taking place. Manatees figured out where the warm water was, came around and started feeding. So now they're looking at maybe 15,000 pounds a week. There are around 800 manatees in that zone. We've been sampling the water quality since the 20th of December. So we set out a set of stations special for this particular effort. The feeding takes place in the middle there, the middle stations, that's the power plant. We set some up north, and that goes from inshore to offshore, linking up with the blue pin, which is one of our monthly water quality stations. And then a set of, again, what we call control sites, where there's no feeding to the south. So what we'll be looking for in the graphs that follow is for those middle sites, the sites with the F in their name, to show a pattern in some way, shape, or form, because that would maybe relate it to the feeding. So one of the things obviously of concern is the chlorophyll. That's the measure we use to look at the biomass of single-celled algae or phytoplankton in the water column. And as you can see, we did sort of see the tail end of that bloom, the one that was at Kogo, right? So it extended down to where this was, the northern part anyway. But then since then, the chlorophyll levels have dropped, so, and all continued very low.
Mr. Chair, if I could interrupt,
Sure.
I'm sorry. Dr. Jacoby, because of the way you had that spike there, what was the reasoning? Is there any indication as to, because it seemed to be a very short-lived spike for just several hours or maybe a day?
Yeah. It was a few days. And it was diatoms, so it wasn't one of our bad actors, as it were.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask the question.
Yeah, it was one of the good old days. It was one of the sort of phytoplanktons that we saw then. They don't because they're a little larger and because they need silicon, they don't tend to form these really intense, widespread, long-lasting blooms. They tend to be a little spiky. So they show up, they use up all the silicon, and then they sort of fade away.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
so it was a bit more of a normal bloom, if you could call it that. So then, obviously, dissolved oxygen is a concern, and again, the values are all relatively high, and you can see again a peak where there was some productivity going on from some of the phytoplankton. And then this is looking at Secchi depth. So a Secchi disk is a typically black and white disk that you lower into the water column. It was first imagined by a priest, and that's why it bears his name, Secchi. And you lower it down till you don't see it anymore, and then you measure that depth, and it gives you a water clarity measure. The problem with Secchi depth is that the Secchi disk can be seen on the bottom, and so then you don't really have a Secchi depth, as it were. You just have the depth of the site. And so what I do is convert it to a proportion of the depth of the site. So if it reaches 1, that means that the Secchi disk was visible on the bottom. And if it's somewhere in between, it was that part of the water column. So, and as you can see, generally speaking, the values stayed reasonably high. So the water clarity's been good. There's no evidence that the feeding is leading to changes in the water clarity. One more thing before I close. So a fair bit of our governing board at the St. John's District is quite interested in the lagoon. One of the outcomes of that will be a communications plan. So they're pulling together our communications staff to have things that they'll roll out over time. And what I want to bring to you today is if you want to interact with that plan, is to think about how you'd like to interact with that plan, and then let me know. Particularly if you see something that, as it rolls out, you're not fond of, definitely let me know. But you'll be hearing from the district a bit more in the near future. So.
Mr. Chairman, this is on.
No, push the button.
There we go. There was some press about a month and a half ago, and there was other organizations taking the lead, if you will, in the press. And I think the lead for this lagoon should come squarely with Dwayne DeFries and or the St. John's, my humble opinion, or South Florida. I really think that I hate to see other organizations spouting off erroneous claims about where and what we're doing. And the knowledge base, I think, sits with this staff. They know from one end to the other. I think we need to take the lead and have a team developed by the talent that we have here in South Florida and St. John's. But I think Dwayne and this staff should be the voice of this lagoon and take the lead in that and communicate with the newspapers and with the media on a regular basis best they can. In Citrus, I did that for all 6 counties, and it's extra work, but I really think the communication should come from a well-thought-out team of people from this Lagoon Council, and it starts with Dwayne.
Do you want to address that, Dwayne?
I'll be happy to. First, I want to thank Chuck, because as soon as we're done with this meeting, we'll be going to a harmful algal bloom meeting that has been occurring when we're in desperate times weekly with all the agencies, every county, most of the state agencies. So we're communicating well among each other, especially with harmful algal blooms. Currently, we're just meeting monthly because it's been quiet, but we're ready, willing, and able now with what do you think we have, Chuck? Maybe 25 people on that call?
Yeah,
around so we are meeting on a regular basis to make sure the agencies are communicating. And I can tell you that over the last 5 to 6 months and beyond, our policy internally, which I set, was when the media calls, we answer. We don't block and bridge. If the media calls, and usually I handle those media calls, I've probably done 24 on Manatees just in the last month and a half or 2, and it's amazing the interest and concern. It's national, and international. And so we've had, you know, film companies from New York, ABC, NBC, you know, the Weather Channel. And so I've had an open door policy to all of that, but I handle that personally and don't put staff in the middle of those media conversations. Because as you all know, you know, sometimes those articles don't come out exactly the way you want or the way you actually express the facts. And then it becomes political, you know, and then phone calls get made. We have not worried about that. We've put our best foot forward with facts, with the media. Anybody who calls gets an answer back basically same day or the next day. So we'll continue to do that. But it is a little nerve-wracking at times because there are some journalists who are out there looking for angles, you know, that may or may not be aligned with the factual information. And you've seen some of those in the press. So we can't guarantee that we'll wind up being the lead on an article, and that's happened more than a few times. Say 50% of the time they use us for an information resource, and you won't see a quotable quote, you know, from us as the NEP or the council. But we're doing our best to do everything we can for the media. And Chuck reminds me on a regular basis about 2016 during Easter time when we had a red algae bloom up in Cocoa Beach, and I made a side comment to the press that, you know, isn't it interesting that the water is running red just before Easter? And the quote was, DeFries said bloom is biblical. And I did have some anxious calls from very high up, you know, on that particular article. So there's always a risk.
That's good.
What are you suggesting, that the media has an agenda that sometimes they pursue?
They're just feeding the people who read, you know, or listen. But so far, I think we've been well represented.
Chuck, I have a question for you, and it's not, I know this is what you were reporting on, but you were mentioning, and you did mention the feeding of the manatees. Do you know if any study is being done or anybody's keeping track of the comings and goings of the manatees? In other words, are we training these manatees to be dependent on us?
Well, I mean, that is certainly a concern. I mean, the warm water itself is just a concern. And there's a plan that they've worked with the power plants to, you know, taper that off as they open up other warm water sites and so forth, so that the manatees have access to what they need. And this feeding is, you know, is an experiment, and I think everybody will freely admit that. But it was kind of a place where I think everybody felt like they were between a rock and a hard place, and, you know, there was no good choice. There were only sort of moderate choices, and that's what they've tried to do.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Comment on that. My office is in the USDA lab at Fort Pearson, and citrus. We're experimenting with varieties of citrus to defeat greening that we never even dreamed we would do. Our standard issue rootstocks signs we've used for 100 years aren't working anymore, and we're having to think of ways of surviving. And I think the future of the Senior River Lagoon, with the continued mega growth we're going to see, it's unbelievable what's happening from one end of this lagoon to the other, that we need to possibly look at and have the scientists here look at it as other grasses that can survive in murkier water, that can feed the manatees. We need to get into a breeding program with Harbor Branch or whoever should be there to look at that. We're doing it in citrus to survive. I think the survival of this lagoon, because as fast as we could do great projects from the county, from the districts, from this lagoon council, there's another 300,000 people living along the lagoon with rooftops and septic tanks and fertilizer in the backyard. So I just see the future of the health of the animals in this lagoon is so, you know, dependent on the grasses. I think a breeding program for Plan B and C and D on grasses, I think, is something we need to consider.
Well, that's being done, isn't it, Twain? The different types of grasses and some that can grow with less sunlight and others that are even more fragile, so that they actually, when the manatees grab them, it doesn't pull them out by the roots, it breaks the stem. parts off of it.
I'm going to address that in my report, but the answer is we've done 6 pilot projects so far, funded by council. And when I do my report, I'll give you kind of the big picture of where we are in the thought process. And so the answer is really simply, we're not going to be able to plant our way out of this problem. This problem is a water quality problem first, but replanting is going to be absolutely essential, at least in my personal opinion, to accelerate the recovery of the system. And as Doug mentioned, our level of science to scale this and how we approach scaling and breeding varieties that may be more resistant, we have a huge opportunity and a huge need to do some more science there. But I'll mention in my report where I think we stand. Those 6 projects have been, at best, modestly successful, but we're learning a lot about the process of replanting seagrasses, and the answer is it's not easy and it's expensive, and you want to have your science ducks in a row before you start. So I'll talk a little bit about it in my report just to give you the highlights, but we've got a lot of work to do there to understand the long game, once water quality is right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So a brief answer, yeah, FWC staff, there's a fair few out there, and I'm sure they're doing their best to figure out who's eating, who isn't eating, how many manatees are there that they are in different groups. Some manatees hang in the Indian River Lagoon pretty much all year, others move up and down the coast. They use the scars to identify them and so forth. So there's a lot of effort going into this work.
Good. Mr. Chair?
Chuck, are you finished?
Yeah, I'm finished. Seem to be questions, but.
Let me call Diane while she's coming up.
Oh, sorry. Mr.
No,
Chair,
I'm not ignoring you. I'm going to get to you. I
Okay.
just want you to know that Jackie and Doug have to leave at 11.
Okay.
So I want to move this along as much as I can.
All right,
So
I just-
while Diane's coming up, Diane.
Actually, you want to do this?
Oh, okay, sorry.
No worries.
Chuck,
Very quickly, I was actually going to bring it up that the USDA has so much experience in GMO operations with, breaking down the psyllid, citrus psyllid and the greening and so on and so forth, doing the genome. Maybe that's an opportunity that USDA gets involved with their science and bring it forward to like the Harbor Branch science and let the sciences mesh together and use those experiences to find a better way. So,
Good idea. Jackson.
I just wanted to say, for the record, that I think we have to keep our eye on the basin management action plans and the way that water quality is supposed to be improved in this state. We cannot lower our standards. We have to raise our standards of how we are enforcing, and no one likes that word, but how we are enforcing the pollutants, the nitrogen and phosphorus that are running off our lands. If there are 300 new people coming into our county every day, we have to encourage them in some way, shape, or form to use native plants and not use fertilizers, things that work here, to go on sewer and not to be on septic. I think this is a huge thing. I am glad they are helping those manatees. We have to do that. But this should be the aha moment for us to look to the Department of Environmental Protection. We have Tom Frick here, who used to do so much for that, be the voice for that. And that agency is a great agency, and Jason too, but it is overwhelmed. I mean, they have so much to do, so we all have to help them. We all have to be part of making sure that we are dealing with pollution at the source and not just trying to invent a new seagrass that's going to work in murky waters. Sorry. I respect it, but we've got to be stricter with our own standards.
John, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to help you get done faster. I don't have near the science that Chuck does. I can't pronounce half the words he uses, so this will be a brief and high-level water quality update. I'll also just give you a couple of brief updates for Mountain County since our council member wasn't able to make it. So we always kind of give an update on where Lake Okeechobee is because it's so germane to the health of the St. Lucie River and estuary and the lower Indian River Lagoon. It dropped below 15 feet a few weeks ago. That's always a nice benchmark. We expect, typically you see about a foot a month for the next 3 months drop in the lake, and we are enjoying seeing some additional flows to the Caloosahatchee that are beneficial to their tape grass that's in their middle estuary and up the river a bit. That was at the request of the Water Management District, and we're grateful for that. We think it'll help us get to a more appropriate lake level by June 1st to help some of the seagrasses, or some of the littoral zones recover on the western shore of Lake Okeechobee, and also to set us up for whatever Mother Nature brings this summer. So the lake's in decent shape. We had a little bit of release last month. It was local basin runoff, but it created a little angst because fortunately we are now pumping water into the C44 reservoir, brand new $1 billion SERP project that will bring tremendous benefit to the St. Lucie River and the southern IRL. That project is in its testing stage, so they filled it for 5 feet. And they had to do it now because they've got deadlines to meet and they've got to hand it off to the district for operation at some point. The challenge we had was that it was using lake water to fill it because we didn't have local basin runoff in January to do it with. And then as soon as they got to that 5 feet and they stop it so that they can do some testing and monitoring, we started getting local basin runoff. And so we ended up with a little bit of discharge water during that time. But really the lagoons are the lower lagoon, the St. Lucie River is in great shape. This is a different slide than what I saw. Oh yeah, this is what I was just talking about. This has got to be one of your pictures, Jackie. Pretty exciting project. And actually next week we get to meet with the Assistant Secretary of the Army on site. He's a new appointment for Civil Works. Mike Connor is his name, and he's taking the time to come down and see this new feature. It's that significant, and we got a lot of other neat features coming I'll talk about in just a second. So salinities are in great shape. We expect them to be this time of year. Our local basin runoff works well with the flushing of the tide to create really a sweet spot for salinity in the St. Lucie River and estuary at this time of year. It's where we expect it to be. It looks good. Pterococcus levels are low, which is great. We tend to see little spikes in the dry season if you have an unusual rainfall event. We haven't, so they're in great shape. And anecdotally, things look good out there. We're getting a lot of positive feedback from fishermen and recreational users of the water. It's in great shape. Of course, we'd love to see more seagrass, but Dwayne's going to solve that for us here anyway. So. Couple of short updates. One, Martin County just finished a 2-year water quality needs assessment where we contracted with Wood Incorporated to help us look at the entire county and look for opportunities for us to do local projects to continue to reduce nutrients and other pollutants to the estuary. We're really in great shape on our BMAP. We're going to, once all the dust settles with our calculations and projects that are in play, we'll be at 200% of our allocation for nitrogen. We'll likely be over 100% on phosphorus by the end of this year, but we're not using that as our benchmark for success. Our benchmark for success will be meeting the TMDL. So as long as we have not met that, Martin County is committed to investing in local projects to do what we can in our own basins to reduce nutrients. It was pretty exciting. One thing that I'll point out was that they identified an opportunity for us in taking conveyance systems in the county. They identified about 50 miles of what we would probably just call ditches that take water from one spot to another, and we only ever regarded them as conveyance. They did some science and figured out that, hey, these can actually be treatment facilities, linear treatment facilities, and when you get done with this process, it looks like a stream. So we end up with this really aesthetic and habitat benefit as well. They're working on a pilot project in Jacksonville, and we are wholly committed to kicking off some of that work in Martin County. We've identified a mile segment that we're gonna try to make a demonstration and prove to our constituents that this is a worthwhile activity, that we get some benefit from it from a nutrient standpoint, but also from water attenuation and just general aesthetics. When you turn a ditch back into a stream, We believe that increases property value and quality of life. So we're really excited about that. And the other neat benefit to that is we don't have to buy land. It's seemingly our most challenging aspect of doing stormwater projects is getting the land. And the land's valuable and people just don't want to sell and we don't make them. So having projects where we can achieve some of our goals without that land acquisition element just makes it all the better. Last announcement, which everybody here probably already knows, and I don't see the Corps of Engineers, so I'm going to steal their thunder. The infrastructure bill that was passed in Congress a while back, some of that money made it to the Corps of Engineers, namely $2 billion for aquatic ecosystem restoration in the nation, and $1.1 billion of that was committed to South Florida ecosystem restoration. Wow. And a large chunk of that $1.1 billion fully funds construction of the C-2324 North Reservoir.
Thank God.
It's a project that's nearly shovel ready. It's a project that we have on the IDS, but you know, there was no funding committed to it, and we all kind of thought this is cool, we're making progress, but will it ever get funded? It's completely funded, virtually overnight. So that was a remarkable win. It's going to marry up very well with the C-2324 STA that we're breaking ground on next month, or later this month.
Yep.
Thanks to the district's efforts and the Corps of Engineers' ambition on IRL South, we're going to start to see the needle move sooner than later. So that's exciting. That's all I have. If you have questions.
Wow, that's big news. Questions?
I just want to make a suggestion. I did not know that we had a time limit, that we were going to lose possibly a quorum at 11 o'clock. Would it be important to move issues that need a motion forward before we do anything else that takes up additional time? I'm just suggesting because I don't want to lose a quorum when we have so much business that needs to be voted upon.
Well, you know, that makes an awful lot of sense.
Yep.
All right, so let's do that.
So the
Is
first
that
item.
okay with Kathy and other folks that, okay. Okay, so consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Moving on to new business. Dr. DeFries, 12A.
I'll be brief. Let me come up for that one. You heard great news about federal funding. I have additionally great news. 2 years ago, we worked really hard among the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Programs and our partners at the Association of National Estuary Programs, and requested that Congress consider the National Estuary Program for some of the funding that was going through what is now the Bipartisan Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Law. And so we saw $132 million line item for the NEP. That's going to equate to about $914,000 in federal dollars coming to our program directly. We're anticipating, and some of this is still, as you might imagine, in flux with administrative decisions at EPA, but it's going to put us on a fast track. And so we have to make a decision, you know, about $914,000 coming into our budget for this fiscal year 2022, and then another $914,000 coming sometime in the near future for our fiscal year 2023, which we're already budgeting for. You'll see the tentative budget. These are no years, so many of you in the counties and the state government are kind of limited to a 3-year spend. We are not limited to that. So our language was available until spent. And so what I'm going to show you is a suggested plan from staff to get money on the ground quick, to put us in full position to hopefully align with our normal budget year in fiscal 23. And in the interim between now and June 1, we're going to have a new EPA work plan, a second work plan, an agreement in place before those monies come to us. So this is what we're suggesting. We have a really good positioning among many of the NEPs because we have projects underway. So we're proposing that $500,000 be just budgeted towards it's 6 projects in all 5 counties. And many of you ask, how are we doing county by county? And I left that data on your table. But this will be the first time we've ever said, let's spread the love county by county. So we're proposing that $100,000 be applied to those projects that are underway right now in our budget, claw back our local funds to our budget, and then we will come back to you in May with our final 2023 budget and whatever amendments we need to make in the revenue expenditure side on our 2022. And you notice all of these projects are right in the wheelhouse of infrastructure. They're all great projects with nutrient reduction, and so we decided to just evenly split our allocation so everybody, got an even distribution on this first year. What that means, though, is that 500,000 is coming back, another 414 will be in remainder, and then another 917 will have to be addressed in our 23 budget. You're going to see in a little bit that we've been working really hard since really January to get all the proposals that you'll see for funding for 23 before you today, and our tentative budget to reflect those. And so what we're proposing as the second part of our approach to the federal dollar is releasing a request for qualifications to support infrastructure development of those partners who want to expand their capacity to do seagrass restoration, clam restoration, oyster restoration, all of those groups that could expand their efforts if they had the physical capacity to do so. And so the RFQ would be qualified. We'd talk to them, see where they want to go, because this will be available for multiple years. We can make commitments, over the 5-year period, and then control quality through contract. And also, immediately, if you so choose to, accept this proposal from staff, we would immediately turn around and set up 2 new RFPs out of cycle, one for water quality, one for habitat restoration. Put those calls on the street, try our best to get everything in order in the next 90 days. So we are coming to you in the May meeting, which would be our meeting in preparation for finalizing our 23 budget and our work plans with a full view of the detail. If in fact we don't make it, we still have the ability to adjust in August. And my worry is really with Dan Kolodny. We have to contract all these new projects. You're going to see we're going to bring, how many, Dan? 15? 15 new projects on board. This could be another 15, and we have to contract, get them all ready for an October 1 start. So what we're asking is authorization from the board to move judiciously and quickly to get ready for these dollars and to adapt as we need to with any requirements that EPA may decide as far as reporting without coming back to the board, that we'll just keep this moving and report back to you where we stand at our May meetings.
So we're going to need a motion to authorize staff to issue an RFQ for restoration capacity building and RFPs for water quality and habitat restoration as appropriate to identify new projects for funding to begin FY 2023, correct?
That's correct.
We have a motion? Second?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Question.
Chris?
Does that include the projects that you've already listed for the $100,000? And if so, how were those selected?
Those projects, a good question for the record. Those projects were all selected through our competitive process a year ago. So they've all been vetted, reviewed, recommended for acquisition. And so we really don't need authorization per se for that because it's an accounting. So all we're going to do is fund that $100,000 with these federal dollars and then bring our local dollars back for use on other projects as we move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we had a vote and it passed unanimously. So we're going to move on to 12B.
No.
Oh, we didn't?
To finalize that, sir.
We had a motion and a second. We didn't take a vote?
No, it's good.
I know we have that time constraint.
Yes. Moving right along. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. Now we can move along.
Thank you.
There's an echo in the room. 12B,
All right, good morning.
Daniel.
So you all saw the tentative budget in the package. So in respect of our time, I'm just going to kind of go over the highlights instead of each individual line item. In this tentative budget, we have an increase in our federal Section 320. We were appropriated this current fiscal year at 700. You can see in 2023 we're appropriated for 750. So we have a nice increase there. And then of course we have the 914,000 that Dwayne just spoke about that's coming in. As far as expenditures, I'm going to kind of go over some of that with the line items in the different RFPs that you're going to hear about in just a minute. We're also bringing some funds from current or former fiscal years into this tentative budget. And we will probably, in the final budget, have some additional funds from the audited financials. So all those forward dollars will come forward as well. But if you have any specific asks on any of the line items, I'd be happy to go over them. Otherwise, for time.
Okay. So we're not voting on this at all, right? So then we need to move on to C.
You do need a motion to pass the budget.
Yes. We need a motion. Okay, yes. Motion to approve.
Motion to approve the budget, yeah.
Okay, do we have a second? Second by Jeff. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
All right, so I'll go over these projects just a little bit. We received 4 proposals in the water quality. We had originally budgeted $600,000 for this category. All 4 of those proposals were eligible for funding. They meet the 70% requirement. I'd be happy to answer any questions about these projects individually, but I know time's a constraint, so I just kind of want to let you know that they're all eligible. One thing to note is that at the end of funding these at their full amount requested, we would have a surplus of $178,635 in this particular category, but you're going to see that can come into play into the next categories. So is there any particular questions regarding these projects?
Okay, hearing no questions, we're going to need a motion for accepting the IRL-NEP Management Conference recommendations and approve the final ranked list of proposals.
I'll make a motion. Sorry.
Okay, we have a motion by Jackie, second by Joe. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. And we're going to need a separate motion for funding the top proposals contingent and consistent with available funds and budgetary authority, and authorize staff to negotiate and enter into contracts with those applicants.
Funding organization, so moved.
We have a motion to approve the funding. Have a second?
Second.
Second by Chris. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Fiscal year 2023 habitat restoration.
In habitat restoration, we also received 4 proposals. All 4 of them also were eligible for funding. Based on the initial allocation of funds for this category, only the top proposal would have been able to be funded. However, with that surplus from the category 1 that I just mentioned, we can fund all 3 of these additional projects. And staff is recommending that we do fund these, they are eligible, they are good projects. We feel that the money should be moved from that category to fund these projects. Again, I will be happy to answer any questions you may have on these projects individually.
Any questions?
Where are the clam restoration?
Clam is the top ranked project in this. And
What county?
it's mostly in Volusia and Brevard. There is some Indian River County. They're identifying the leases because they have restrictions on where they can put those clams in the lagoon. So they're going to put about 2 to 3 million juvenile clams at these particular leases that they have identified. But I know that they are, this year, because it's the 4th year now we're going to be funding it, some new things they're going to be doing. They're going to try to do some seagrass restoration near those leases around them to see how well they do. And they're also going to release some more petty villagers, the little larvae, just anywhere throughout.
So we have 4 proposals submitted?
That's correct.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Moving on to E.
Second motion?
Excuse me?
I think we need a second motion for the fund top proposals.
On the funding, okay.
So moved.
Let's have a second proposal. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay, E.
Yep. So in the community-based restoration category, we received 2 proposals. Both of those were eligible for funding, and we're recommending to fund those 2 proposals. There would be a surplus of $41,000 after fully funding those projects. So that surplus would come back into our general fund for use at a later time.
So moved.
So we need
Mr.
approval
Chair.
for the 2 proposals. We have a motion to approve.
Just a question, it goes back to the general fund, it's not specific to this particular habitat restoration category.
So community-based restoration?
Right, you said there's 41,000 left over. Does it maintain itself in that particular category, or does it just go to general fund?
Yes, it would just go to general fund.
Okay.
You know, because we don't have any particular other proposals in that category to use. So, you know, we're using to fund those additional projects in the previous category from the surplus in category 1. So this 41,000 will come back to general fund, and we can allocate it to additional projects either in the next RFP cycle or, you know, as council sees fit.
Okay, so we have a motion by Joe. Do we have a second? Second by Doug. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Moving on to F.
This second portion of that again, the top proposals.
Mr. Chair, move approval, requested action.
Second.
For F, is that what we're?
The second part of
Second part,
B.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had 2 proposals,
Yeah, so-
but we need 2 individual.
2 motions for each category. So
Okay, sorry.
First motion is for the ranked list, and the second motion is to fund those.
Okay, so Chris, you made the motion?
Yes, sir, for accept the
And Jeff,
management
second.
conference
Jackie?
recommendations.
Second.
Jackie, second, okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Mr. Chair, move approval to fund the top proposals.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
And it should be noted too, for the public's sake, we have all been briefed on all these items. We've had the backup. We've gone through these things over and over, and we've had
Hours.
hundreds of eyes on these. I just want to make sure that the public understands that we're not just pencil whipping these things. We have had a lot of eyes on all these projects. So-
Good point.
Yeah, all the summaries and the proposals were in the package for y'all. And I want to make them note that we had 54 reviewers over these 5 different categories that you're seeing today score these proposals. So they were heavily vetted by the management conference and volunteers.
That's why I wanted to make sure we had that statement out there, because when folks are watching this at home, there's been a lot of hours put into this thing to get here, so. Yeah.
So do you want me to just move through these, G, H, I?
Well, you're next.
Mr. Chair, we need a second motion for F.
F.
I made
Okay.
that motion.
So we need a second motion?
Yes.
We have a motion by Joe, second.
Second.
Second, Chris. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, what's next?
G. So in the last category, we received only 1 proposal from Brevard County. Unfortunately, it did not meet the eligibility requirements for funding, so staff is recommending not to fund this proposal, and that $50,000 will come back, like I said, from the surplus of the $41,000 to general fund.
Okay.
So there is no action with this.
So we're moving on to H.
Okay, so we put the small grants application in the package, and there were some just minor changes recommended from the CAC to this application, and all we're asking is that you authorize us to release it immediately, and it will be up for review, the projects that will be approved at the May meeting.
Do we have a motion to approve?
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
So based on the couple of the projects that you saw in the previous slides with all the RFPs, we have to put together for EPA a work plan of that by June 1st. And you saw the line items in our tentative budget for what's going to entail in that EPA work plan. Just authorizing us to go ahead and put that together and submit it, as well as the business plan, which encompasses not only the EPA work plan, but all the other projects that are funded by the council. And that will be also put together.
We need a motion for that as well.
Yes, sir.
So moved.
We have a
Second.
motion by Joe and a second by Chris. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
And for the record, the EPA work plan is required by EPA for us to manage every period.
Yes, I have to get it to them by June 1st or to have our grant 320, Section 320 funding.
Mr. Chair, Board, I'm pleased to bring this one to you because it's different, and it's something that we've been, working on for a while, but not anticipating that we would have any board action. And so we've been working with Linda Weatherman and the Space Coast Economic Development Commission for a number of years, talking about technology, innovation, workforce issues, and the issue of water quality as it relates to hiring is a big deal, and especially Brevard County with so much expansion at Kennedy Space Center with private launch. The EDC actually went to Enterprise, Florida just a couple of weeks ago and presented a very brief out-of-cycle proposal to look at a feasibility study to look at the wastewater treatment plant delivery, so the utility that serves Kennedy Space Center and NASA. Which is not going to be in compliance with the new rules at DEP. It's very old. And so we're quite surprised, but at Enterprise, Florida, they granted $200,000 to move forward with a feasibility study. I talked to Linda Weatherman at the EDC, and they've requested that we step in on their behalf under a subcontract to actually put that RFP out, get a task force together to review the RFP, and we would become the grant manager to get that feasibility study done, since that's what we do. And so the request here is to authorize staff to assist the EDC with implementing that grant award. We'll bring back the contract language by May, but we'll need to get that RFP on the street. And so part of that requested action is to authorize us to get this team together, get the RFP developed, get it on the street, and start getting applicants responding to what will be our fourth out-of-cycle RFP this year. And we will come back to you with our progress every meeting until that is done. So very excited about both the visibility and the fact that this is a really big deal. Both for the economy, for Kennedy Space Center, and for the Lagoon.
Yeah, I think it is too. So do we have a motion to authorize staff to assist the EDC and the Space Coast?
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
And Mr. Chair, FDEP or DEP and FDEP may be interested because of the biosolid component that we have. We had our summit not long ago. I think it was in Martin County. Is that where it was? I can't remember. But, the Janicki plant was proposed as new technology. And if this moves forward, this might be the opportunity for us to find an alternative for biosolids in addition to this particular technology and this opportunity.
No, it's a great point. And we actually had a meeting of all the players previous to this with Senator Debbie Mayfield, who chaired that meeting. And so all the players are there, but I may be calling you because I want to make sure we have a couple of utility directors on this task force. I'm no expert in wastewater, and I want to I will be reaching out to DEP, NASA to build a committee to review the RFP itself and to review the applicants that come in response to the RFP. I want to build at least 7 people of real expertise in this area because this is the first step to what could be a brand new wastewater treatment facility. And they'll have to look at all those options and opportunities, very similar to what you all are doing down in St. Lucie County with the wastewater treatment plant down there. It's the first step to a very big project.
That's why I have a significant interest, because we are trying to move that plant off of the inlet right there on South Beach and move it to the west and so on. So have a significant interest, and I think that the 2 utility directors are having that conversation. Fort Pierce Utilities and St. Lucie County Utilities may be an asset. So,
fantastic. I'll get back to you on that and see who the key person. I already have a few volunteers, so
sure.
But it's not me.
All righty. Moving on to K.
This is just a minor administrative adjustment to our credit cards. I'm not going to belabor this. I explained it to you all. We just want to adjust our second card that has a limit of $2,500 to $5,000, so my staff and I aren't going out of pocket on credit cards when we travel.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Mr. Chair, we can skip L since there's no action needed and come back to that and move to M, committee quorum update.
Okay.
We talked to our advisory committees this week, asked them what they wanted to do. We talked about this with you all last meeting, that we're having some struggles getting quorums. And so the general consensus was this, that they're recommending that we have a kind of a 3 strikes you're out rule, that if you don't call in and say, and have an excused absence in a year, we only meet 4 times, that if you have 3 unexcused absences in a year, that we will come back to you and we will replace that member. If they have excused absence and they call us up in advance, that would not be the case. And the other portion of that is they said, before we do anything more, with quorums, to reach out to every individual, in our volunteer, force, which is about 100 people, and see if they are still committed to this effort. It's a travel time. There are a lot of issues, both in cost and time and money. And those that want to be replaced will come back with vacancies and do those replacements, and thank everybody who's served to this point, for their service. And so rather than going into adjusting quorums, the recommendation is to have staff, move to change the policies to allow for taking attendance, 3 unexcused, and you'll be asked to be replaced. And then staff will reach out in the interim, because we won't have that policy for adoption for you until May. We'll work on that issue. And one last thing I do want to let you know, you kind of directed staff and Glenn and I to look at legislative fixes. Glenn was kind enough to find a couple of bills that were moving in the Senate and the House. I reached out to Senator Debbie Mayfield. I thought we had the ability to maybe jump on those bills. The Senate bill was moving through committee with the agreement that they would add our advisory committees onto the bill to be exempted. The House bill did not move at all. And so right now it doesn't look like we have a legislative exemption. We'll go back next year and try that again. But in the interim, we had full quorum at Management Board, and they've been pretty consistent. We didn't have quorums in either of the others, that's correct? CAC, we had a quorum. It's the scientists are really struggling, and it's mainly because so many of them teach, and if they have to drive from, let's say, Volusia, they're spending a whole day with us. So we'll work through this. We just want to get authorization to amend the policies right now to have a, have an attendance rule.
So we need a motion to authorize staff to make policy changes as directed.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to support that and make motion. I wouldn't be offended if it was cut down to 2 meetings. The payment for the committee work is basically nothing.
Correct.
You're there for a mission. You have 4 meetings a year. You miss 2 for no reason with no explanation. I mean, things do come up. That's 50% of the workload. And the committee is there to get the work done. They're there for the right reason. So I wouldn't be offended if it was 2, but I'll be happy to make the motion.
And staff is, wouldn't have a problem with that as well. I think all of our members understand both the authority and the responsibility and the honor that you all have given them by appointing them, especially at the CAC. And so if we take that to 2, I don't think that's a burden. Because excused, as they call us, and tell us why they can't come, and at least we know going into a meeting whether we have a quorum or not.
Anyone else have any thoughts?
I'll second it, but I want to just make a statement is that if these are our appointees from the counties, we should be aware of lack of quorum and our appointees not making it so that we can have that discussion with them or be prepared to replace them. So that conversation with staff to us for our appointees, because I don't want to be blindsided. Well, I didn't know that my person wasn't showing up.
Yeah, we'll have that conversation with each of you.
Okay.
One other question about that. Did you have a resignation from a Volusia County person this week?
Not that we're aware of.
Okay.
So Mr. Chair, the motion, I supported the
Right.
action for the 3.
Altered it to 2.
But if there's any further discussion, that you would want to.
Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
I'm okay with 2 with only 4
I
meetings.
support that change.
You like it downgraded to 2?
I do. I do as well.
Mr.
Okay,
Chair,
hearing no opposition to that,
then
then
I
the
would have
motion
to,
stands.
I have to move my motion to 2.
Okay, we have a
Seconder
motion. Do we
agrees.
have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Chris, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Great work.
Glenn, the next item, I'm going to turn over to you.
Good morning. As you know, this is the time to conduct the evaluation of Wayne, and you all did. And I provided you with the spreadsheet, and as you can see, it's an average score of 3.9 out of 4. So that's.
Geez, what do you mean? You didn't get perfect? In real?
I know he's slipping.
You and I were the only ones that didn't give him 4s on everything. But I do want to state my reasoning for not having a 4 on the one issue, and that is the diversity component that we talked about in the past. We have been up against COVID and all these challenges, so I understand that we haven't been able to move to the education side, and also the public, from that standpoint, hasn't been engaged as I had hoped. So it's going to be a heavy lift, and I just wanted to make sure that you understood it. My reasoning for a 3 instead of a 4 was simply to make a point that we still have to look at our diversity issues in regard to the lagoon, because the lagoon is used by everybody, regardless of race, creed, color, or orientation. So.
Okay, we have a motion from Doug.
Yes.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, second.
Sorry.
Did Mr. Torcivia get to say everything he wanted to say?
Well, it's pretty much in the spreadsheet again.
Okay, but I'd like you to
He got
at
straight
least.
4s across the board for just about everybody. A couple got a 3 here and there. So when you average it out, it's a 3.9 with a couple of 3s sprinkled in, probably among 40 or 50 4s. So you all think he's doing a great job. I did also speak with staff. Staff also gave him glowing reviews, commended his leadership abilities. So all around, it's almost walking on the lagoon at this point.
That's right.
Well, we heard he was in the biblical
About
side
that
of
red
things.
water.
On the red water, exactly.
Okay, so I got a second. We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you,
Passes
sir.
unanimously.
Very proud of our ED.
Great presentation.
I'm going to see if I can do this in 1 minute. So my update is on the IRL specialty plate. The Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles has approved the plate that you see there. It's just a slight variation on the one we showed you last time. We have submitted our letter to request that they stop producing the old Snook tag. And as soon as they received that, they stopped production on it. They gave us a plate count of how many plates are outstanding that we would be responsible for buying back. And that's in number 3 there. So we currently have about 7,500 plates that are in circulation at the various offices. As they stop production, they'll sell down that stock. And they gave us, so we have to do $2.92 per plate. If we had to buy them today, it would be $22,104. It's not going to be that. So it's going to take 4 to 7 months to put the plate into production. In the meantime, they're going to sell that stock down. And then at that point, when we have the plates and they're ready to be distributed, we'll have to buy back whatever stock is left. But the most that it would be is that 22,000 number. And so we're asking just for a motion today for us to authorize us to buy back the stock when the time comes.
Do we have a comment on this, Doug?
I've been doing license plates for the Indian River citrus industry forever, and I've stood out by the highway and watched them go by, different colors, reds and blues and greens. And the one we picked, the iconic yellow and green one that says Indian River Grapefruit, we had other wording on it. We condensed it. The key is people driving by at 50 miles an hour, can they read that? And I would, to me, the most important words on there are Indian River Lagoon. If you can make that bigger and brighter, Florida's somewhat important. I mean, everybody knows the lagoons of Florida. I just like to see Indian River Lagoon. That's it. That's the prize. I just like to see that emphasized or increased or, you know, more vibrant coming at you on the license tag.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and see if we can change it at this point.
Yeah,
'Cause we've sent them the files for it. So.
If you can't move approval, I move approval of it.
Well, I think that the Jupiter Lighthouse should be the Fort Pierce Silos, actually, but that's
That might be the Volusia Lighthouse. That one's also red.
Okay. That's why I forgot
There
to
are
have one up
2 red lighthouses in Florida.
Correct. And no matter where you live, that's the one it is.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion to approve. We have a second by Joe. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, now we need to go back. Okay, Management Conference Committee reports. Kathy?
Good job, Mr. Chair, on getting through the motion, the items to vote on.
Well, good morning, and this is my last summary to you folks as a chair, yeah.
Jeez,
So
like you're part of the family now.
But you already kind of stole my thunder. So I guess just a couple of things that I wanted to let you know that we heard that you will not hear is the management board heard a presentation by the University of South Florida's Drs. Mark Rains and Kai Rains on creating a database of historic wetlands versus current wetlands. And that can be used to prioritize wetland preservation and restoration. Okay, so the data follows the Florida Public Land Survey System. And what you can do is recall wetland locations throughout specific, through specific queries. And their pilot project was in St. Lucie County. So the data relates to the loss of historic wetlands, creation of flow and drainage patterns. Let me just go back here for a second. Okay, so they can recall the wetland locations. Yeah, okay. So their pilot project was in St. Lucie County, and the data relates to the loss of historic wetlands, creation of flow and drainage patterns, condition of the wetland size, other features of wetlands. And so this allows the user to create a very specific query of wetlands and for actually a very specific reason or goal. And it's hard for me to explain it here, but it was pretty interesting. So when you do that, so like say in St. Lucie County that you want to look at what wetlands would be good to restore, you can have this query that says, you know, we want wetlands in this area, we want them to be this big, we want them to already be in this specific condition, and bam, on a map it comes out and it shows all the points of these things. So it's pretty cool how they can do that. So hopefully you'll get to see that in the future. But as we discuss that, one outcome of our discussion was that the management committee would like a presentation on water farming, because those are actually some of the new wetlands that are being produced throughout the counties. So that was the big thing that we heard that you guys aren't gonna hear. We did hear an update from KJ on the Geo Collaborative, but you're gonna hear that as well. And everything else you approved that we had recommendations for you to approve, and so I'll be passing, you know, my little gavel, which I don't have, to Tom and Bob. So thank you very much.
All right, we're going to miss you.
Thank you, Kathy.
I'll still be on the, you know, committee, but I just won't be the chair. But thanks.
Very good. Thank you.
And I just want to thank Kathy for her leadership. You've been amazing on that committee. We're glad you're still staying.
Well, thanks.
But just another point to that, Mark Raines is the appointed state scientist for the state of Florida now. And he and his wife, what was shocked me about the data, and if you all want, he's hard to get scheduled, but if you want him to come in and give a presentation, we can try to work on that. But it was like an 89% loss of wetlands in St. Lucie County, but a 300% gain in channelized edges. And when you see that, and Jackie will appreciate it, they actually digitized the late 1800 survey maps as the base layer. And kudos to the county for, you know, contracting that work. It was an impressive presentation, and some real, you can see the changes in this dramatic, you know, flushing that happens every time it rains to the lagoon. And Chuck and I talk about this all the time. We talk about nutrients, we talk about pollutants. We rarely talk about fresh water and how fresh water gets to the system, you know, so rapidly and high volume and sometimes high velocity. And you can see it right before your eyes with these maps. So if you'd like to see us, you know, bring Mark in at some point, we can try to schedule him for a presentation in front of you.
Chair, may I say something?
I think it's a great idea. Jackie?
I would, personally, I would love that. I hope you will do that. I think those visual tools are so powerful in every way for us to see, and for young people to see how it was and what has happened, and then maybe what we can do from here. And isn't it amazing that Mark Raines, who's now in this huge position, you know, did that research in St. Lucie County. Amazing. I mean, yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts? I think it's a good idea. All right. Okay, Dr. Jacoby?
This will be fairly brief because I was in excused absence. I was busy overwhelming our governing board, St. John's governing board, with the sort of egghead stuff that I bring to you on a regular basis. But in my absence, they decided that they would reappoint me as chair, as it were. So I'll carry on.
Okay.
But they saw the same thing. I saw Mark Raines' presentation when he did it for St. Lucie County, and yeah, it's a very impressive way to assemble data, and I think is really helpful to planning. So.
Good deal. Thank you, sir. Who do we have for the CAC? Okay, Miss Kathy.
So CAC met yesterday afternoon in this room. They had a really lengthy discussion about quorum and what they wanted to do about quorums. And many of them noted that they, you know, these were our regular attendees, of course, noted how honored they were to be appointed by you all to sit and represent the NEP. And so that was a really impressive discussion. I thought that was great. They recommended everything that you have already approved, so I'm not going to belabor that, but it was a nice, healthy, good discussion yesterday.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to 10. And this would be KJ.
Hi, everybody. So I'm KJ. I kind of gave you a brief introduction last session, but I'm just going to give you a project update on the FDEP's Innovative Technology Grant, and then also talk about some additional GIS projects that I'm talking about, that I'm going to be working on. Okay, so we had 4 webinars, and we had about 140 participants over those 4 different webinars. We had representatives from the federal, state, county, and academics. So we had a bunch of people tuning in from a bunch of cool places, but most of them were here in Florida, which was super important. We had some people from BC, some people from France, South Korea, Massachusetts, California, Alaska, but again, a lot of them were from locally, which is super important. Our YouTube link will be available for the webinar on our website in a few weeks, I think, along with the questions and answers all written out. So the next part of this Innovative Technology Grant is we're doing an emergency response scenario. Again, we're going back to the 2016 brown tide. We're going to simulate an emergency response to the fish kill, and then kind of pull in who the key players are for when there is a fish kill, and using GeoCollaborate to kind of bring all those data sources together and how you would approach a response plan. The webinar series planned for the end of March and the beginning of April. Okay, so side projects that I've kind of been working on. So I'm working on a GIS data hub for the NEP. So a lot of the maps and the projects that we've been working on, that's going to kind of hopefully, when I get hired on full time, this is going to be something I'm moving to. But it's already in production, and we just haven't published it yet, so it can be used. But all the data that we're going to have is going to be housed on this data hub. So these are some of the maps I've already completed. They're web applications, so you can access them. We have public boat ramps along the Indian River Lagoon, all the way up from Volusia County, all the way down to Martin County. Our intern, Katie Seidel, she did a One Lagoon nature and heritage tourism site. So it's basically all these cool locations for tourism on the Indian River Lagoon. And it's an app, so you can pull in your location, your address, and it'll give you directions to the closest one to your house, which is pretty cool. This is already on our website, so if you want to get to it, we're going to be adding more over time and kind of working with our stakeholders so that they're represented the way they want to be. We're also working with FAU. We have a One Lagoon monitoring network locations. So that dots, all those dots all the way up at the top, the black dots, those are all the sampling locations in the Indian River Lagoon by the 70 different agencies actively collecting data. We also have a HUC boundary or watershed boundary for the Indian River Lagoon and specifically our water body boundary. So some cool projects that are coming up. So our funded project map. We're going to also do a story map of old fisherman tales along the IRL, which will be pretty cool. That's going to be with Laura Lee Thompson, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so I'm really stoked about that one. We're also going to be defining our management conference, kind of the locations of where our nonprofit stakeholders are, the universities that are doing research on the IRL, as well as those water tech companies too. Yeah. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, as part of the mapping program, a noted scientist we all know, Grant Gilmore, has studied the lagoon backwards and forwards and the spawning of the certain areas of the lagoon. Was that part of the mapping, or could it be in the future? And Dwayne, I talked to you about that before we started that, just to see if there was an option. But
yeah, I can address that. So we've been trying to keep KJ focused on the grant that's paying her time. And you can see we can't help ourselves. She's so skilled. Don't want to embarrass you, but she's so skilled we're starting to bring her in already. I'll need to reach out to Grant Gilmore, getting data digitized. Give you an idea, Mark and Kai Raines told us it took 11 grad students and 3 years to digitize those wetland maps. And so once KJ's with us full time, which will be starting October 1. You know, Grant's a good friend of mine, and I'm going to reach out before then and see how he feels about getting some of his data digitized. But once we have that capability, you know, we're off to the races, and it's just about prioritizing what we need, you know, and what we might lose as some of us get a little older and have data sets sitting in the garage.
Well, that's exactly what my concern was, is that he's got so much information that needs to be downloaded for future generations, and to have it be in a garage someday and not be found. I think that's my concern. The only other concern I would have is knowing where the spawning sites are changes how people fish, so, and that's not good either. So anyway, I just want to point that out.
Yeah, there's some things you just have to redact, you know, and hold quiet for management. Spawning sites is one of them.
Yes.
Chair, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Real quick, I know. Are you mapping seagrass too?
So the Water Management District already has maps of seagrass, and they've been pretty consistent every 2 years, right, Chuck? So there hasn't really been a need for it to be, because it's already being done. So
I was just thinking, I don't know if this is an app or like you go on your phone and it's like one-stop shopping, you have everything in front of you, if a lot of people used this app. In Martin County, we have a lot of seagrass between Sewell's Point and Sailfish Point, and some of it's very shallow, and people run over it in boats and personal crafts. And I had talked to DEP about, was it possible, you know, to mark off certain areas so people who are tourists or whatever, they don't realize they're just destroying these beds that are already in poor condition. So one of their recommendations to me had been like creating a map where someone could see and just kind of just know, you know. And they said they were going to soon be putting out signs at the causeway that like said these are seagrass areas. It's just a thought, you know. People don't really. Even right now, if I went on this, I don't think I could find the seagrass maps on the South Florida Water Management District website. I could go to presentations from a meeting, you know, and 20 pages and find it, but real public information these days is available to people with just a hit. Mm-hmm. And so it's just a thought to protect our seagrasses, to let people know where they are, or just to take the maps from the districts and superimpose them into what you're doing, if that could be allowed. Because I don't know if people already always know where they're located or used to be located.
I can do it. It's all about permissions, if I get permissions from the management districts.
Okay,
so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, could I jump in on this one?
Sure.
Many of you probably remember that we had undertaken redoing the boater's guide for the Indian River Lagoon. Right now, that's over at the FWC side of the house where they're putting those pages together. Our original boater's guide, which was 96, had all the grass maps, and of course we had extensive grasses then, and 89% coverage loss since 2009. So, but prop scarring was a huge problem back in the day, and will be even more of a problem as we start seeing recovery. So when you have, you know, less grass, less density, you know, somebody runs aground, they're going to do proportionally more damage to less grass. And so we've got the opportunity to handle that in the boater's guide, which we'd like to kind of move out of the paper world and into kind of an electronic format. We've had a few conversations with a few companies who do, you know, some of the electronics on boats. And so we'll keep you posted on that, but I think it's a great idea. And what I love about having this GIS capacity is the ability to look at time series. And KJ's been working with Chuck and his team, you know, running really complicated analyses, statistical analyses. So you can look at, you know, what were you at 1980, 1985, 1990, and you can kind of see that ebb and flow, or in the case of seagrasses, that expansion, and then after 2009, you know, this collapse that we've seen. So we'll definitely make sure that we're having that conversation, because I agree, those maps are important.
All righty, let's move into staff reports. Kathy?
All right, so I think all of you have received the annual report at your stations. We have more in the back for you, so if you'd like to take some along to share with the rest of your members, we can do that for you. If you need additional ones, we have several boxes that we had printed, so we've got extras if you need them, just let us know. Calendars are also in the back of the room, so if you haven't gotten your calendars or you need more, the Indian River Lagoon calendar, we still have 2 more boxes left. Annual report is on the website, so if you have somebody that you want to just tell about the annual report, it's right on the homepage of our website, so just send them to One Lagoon, scroll down, 2 inches, and it's right there, so you can click it and get the whole report. Just wanted to share these metrics with you. So last year, we sponsored 2 episodes of Guiding Flow Television, so these were 2 fishing shows. Both of them happened up in Mosquito Lagoon. And it's through WavePoint TV. This is Captain Benny Blanco, for those of you who know him. So we sponsored 2 of his programs. The first one was For the Love of the Lagoon, 3.3 million views. So that was spectacular. When you do the math on what our sponsorship was, it's about 0.15 cents per view. So highly cost effective. The other one was One Community, One Lagoon. That also took place in Mosquito Lagoon with Captain Hillary Hutchison and Justin Price. 3.9 million views and a cost of 0.13 cents per view. So we got a lot of eyes for very little money comparatively. Both of those episodes are, and this is in the annual report, so you don't have to write it down. But if you go to Waypoint TV/Guiding Flow, you can watch both of those, and they're both very good. Social media metrics for the last quarter, you can just kind of see those here, and I'm not going to read them all to you. I just want to call out the post reaches are doing very well on Facebook, so we're hitting thousands of people per post. Twitter also is coming up, so we're hitting into the 3,000s now, almost 4,000 people per post. Instagram, we are getting up into the 4,000, so we're happy there. And our website, just want to call your attention to usership in November. So our website use goes up very much on months when we have our quarterly meetings. So people do go on the website. They are looking for the information, presumably about the meeting, since the usership goes so far up. But average session time is about 5 minutes per session, and people are looking at least 2 pages when they come on. So we're happy about that. This was our top Facebook post. So this had about 2,341 people reached. People on Facebook tend to like the history ones, so we're going to be doing more of those. This one was a history one, and we've noticed in the past that the top posts all have to do with some little aspect of lagoon history. This was our top Instagram post, and for those of you who remember Mike Busha from Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, that's his son in the picture. So this is a very old calendar picture, but very interesting demographics on this. So notice our men versus women. So we've noticed on Instagram, whenever we have a fish picture, the men like it way more than the women do. And then our demographics on Instagram are terrific. So we're hitting an audience we don't usually reach. It's a much younger demographic than our usual audience. And this was our top Twitter post in the last quarter, and it was just done for Christmas. So, yep, beautiful pictures. And that is all I have.
Outstanding, thank you.
Thanks.
Has anybody in the room ever landed a snook that size that those 2 young men did?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow, dog guys. I'm a newcomer.
Long time ago.
Put it back.
I've been working at it for 26 years.
Yeah. I'm not going to tell you where.
Just going to go ahead and give you a quick update on our projects. At the end of the first fiscal quarter of this fiscal year, we had 37 CCM projects or activities in progress, and 3 projects finished during the first quarter. So the first project is from Coastal Resources Group, Pelican Island Phase 5 Restoration. What came up interesting in our CAC was the need to do long-term monitoring on a lot of projects, and this is a really good example of that. They've had 5 different phases now, so this phase 5 was actually fixing some subsidence of a first phase. And so they fixed about 135 linear feet of the shoreline breakwater. I'm just throwing in this picture here. This was in the final report. I thought it was kind of neat. It's what they use to measure the elevation NEVD and get the GPS locations. And you can see the breakwaters, that light brown, kind of underneath the water line there. The second project that finished was a phase 1. We're currently funding phase 2 this fiscal year for the validation of inexpensive and effective modifications of mosquito impoundment management strategies. So Indian River Land Trust is working with Dr. Shanker to tag some fish in an impoundment and see if they can change the rotational impoundment management to increase nursery capacity for certain types of fish. So the first phase was done. They've got all the equipment and set up complete, and they started capturing and tagging. The second phase is going to be actually those different drawdowns of the mosquito impoundment, and then the fish will start moving through those culverts that are tagged, and they'll be able to determine how they work. And this just shows you a picture of one of the impoundments that they're working at. This is the Bee Gum in Indian River County. You can see some new culverts that were installed, and so once they start the drawdowns, we'll see how effective it is. And the third project that finished was Florida Atlantic University's monitoring of microcystin toxins using SPAT. They have 6 stations down in the southern estuary and St. Lucie estuary. And so a few trends that were observed from the initial analysis was both stations 1 and 2, which were in the South Fork, initially decreased in toxin concentration, but then through March of 2021 through November of 2021, it started to increase. Also, Station 3 showed an increase throughout the entire sampling period. So they're going to continue to do some analysis and figure out what this all means. And that's all I have. Any questions on those projects?
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move into board member reports. Start.
You got me first.
Oh, I'm sorry. How did I do that?
And I'm going to be brief. First, I want to thank you for today. What we just did today is actually a historic moment. 6 years, we've always had to strand projects for lack of money. Every ranked project that needed to be funded, that was good enough to be funded, got funded. And I love that. And we will, over the next 5 years, be challenged because if you noticed, we didn't have as many proposals this round. It was almost half of what we normally get. And we thought it might be COVID, but it's actually good news in a challenging way. When you look at the $53 million that was made available by the governor for wastewater, another $25 million that came through St. John's River Water Management District from the legislature. Our counties, our cities, our partners are all deeply into projects. And some of the lack of proposals we're hearing is that their staffs are actually, they're running full speed just to do the projects they have. And so as we move in the next 90 days with this extra federal dollars, one thing I failed to mention, these dollars don't need to be matched. And so we're going to put this out as no match dollars, which will be available to our smaller, rural, economically disadvantaged communities. We'll give some points to those communities that do have match, but we're going to make sure that it's not at the expense of some of our smaller communities that may not be as represented because of the challenges of capacity. So that's number one. Number two, I just wanted to mention on the unusual mortality event. Chuck gave you the briefing. Here's where we are with seagrasses, and I wanted to share it. We have kind of made an internal decision that sometime in the next 90, 120 days to try to do a webinar with our partners who are experts in seagrasses and the projects that we've already funded. But the quick list of the moment, of our knowledge right now is this. Seagrass restoration is complicated, way more complicated than oysters and clams and living shorelines, because it's just a very impacted kind of environment to replant. It's very expensive, both labor and monetarily expensive. And in the 6 projects that we funded as pilot projects, success has been fair to non-existent on the recovery of seagrasses. And one might think, and we all probably went into this with this idea, that it's all just about water quality and clarity. And you can see from Chuck's information last meeting and this information, even when you have long periods of very clear water, we just don't have enough plant stock out there to see robust regrowth. So we know we're going to need to supplementally plant, but the reality is we've got a long way to go to know how to do it to scale, and we're going to have a conversation about what that looks like, so we're not throwing good money against projects that don't have at least a reasonable chance for short and long-term success. So some of those challenges are, it's not just about water clarity, it's about sediment. Is the sediment quality right, but also, what are the conditions that impact this now bare sand that used to be a seagrass bed? So actual dynamics, that sand moving around makes it pretty challenging for a new little sprout to take hold and grow. The other issues are sediment loads from the shoreline, boat wakes, and wind-driven energy. One of the things we're seeing is, no big surprise, if you put out the salad buffet, any animal, including manatees that eat plants, are going to come in and take advantage, including pinfish. So we've had some failures because of herbivory. And so we're going to need to think about caging. And I think Doug mentioned it, thinking beyond just the genetics point that he made, but also thinking about what this looks like over the long haul is going to challenge us as scientists and resource managers. How do you do this at scale? I've been talking to Chair Brower, about a technology that's been proposed, using electronic, low voltage currents through wire. I'm at the point, at least personally and as a scientist, that we should test everything. But we shouldn't just throw money into untested ideas that don't have some data to support efficacy. And so you will be seeing, I think, through this next RFP process and the RFQ process, my hope is that we see some of those proposals coming in that are looking at not just planning, design, and engineering for the shovel-ready turn dirt projects, but some of that data that we need to know to actually advise planning, design, and engineering, which is totally applicable within the federal guidance on this infrastructure bill. So I just wanted to give you that sense that if your citizens come up to you and have a sense that somehow we're going to plan our way out of this problem, it's not going to happen. It's water quality, water quality, water quality. And it's going to be nutrients and fresh water loads, the things that you all have focused on for the last 6 years with my staff and myself. We just need to, keep our resolve to, reducing every pound of nitrogen and phosphorus from wherever we can find it, and respect the local home rule, of priorities within projects. So with that in mind, we're working with Tetra Tech, and Marcy is here to actually go through that 1,000 project list. And so we'll be reaching out to each of the counties, the state, the water management district, take that 1,000 projects and $4 billion worth of work and take it down to what are the highest priorities, and most of that overlaps with the work that's being done in Brevard with the Save Our Indian River Lagoon, which is a very good science-based approach, to how to reduce both nutrients and prioritize projects. And then sometime in the end of the year, we'll be coming back with a short list of, projects that may not have been proposed to us, but projects that we see as priorities, including some of the really big ones. Those of you who were with us in the beginning, remember the feasibility study we did with DEP in St. John's, 2017? That had, $1 billion+ worth of projects and 9 priority projects. Most of those have not actually started yet, and they're moving forward. So that's the really good news. Just want to let you know that the science meeting at Harbor Branch has been postponed, and so we've got a couple of meetings coming up that we will be actively participating in. We'll keep you posted, so I don't want to belabor this here, but the big one is the Science Symposium, and if those of you who hadn't been there, this is a great 2 days to see who's doing what on the entire lagoon, and we're going to have a second day with the citizens, where Chuck and myself and some others are going to talk big picture. And then in April 12th and 14th, also at Harbor Branch, we've teamed up with the Marine Technology Society to start looking at technology. And I want to we have talked about this before, but I want to just reiterate it again. Now that our economic studies out there, when I throw out that $5 billion need, the first thing everybody goes is, gosh, that's impossible. But when you look at the return on investment value, it's actually not only possible, but it's good business, especially within, an economy at $7.6 billion a year connected to the lagoon. If we had technology fixes that would reduce just septic to sewer by 50%, take $1 billion off this price tag. And so I will be continuing to push that technology, both in my conversations at the federal government and the state government. And we've got a number of scientific articles that have just been published. If you're interested, just contact me. I don't think you should spend your time looking for them, but there's some summary articles in the Frontiers of Marine Science. Chuck Jacoby has done the yeoman's job of editing and making sure this goes through peer review. But if you ever wanted to see the big picture of algal blooms, going back a decade and more, there's a paper. Large algae, the macroalgae, there's a paper. The 2012-2013 manatee die-off, there's a paper coming on board. So the science is really coming together. And then lastly, I just want to do a shout out. Debbie Mayfield, Senator Debbie Mayfield, has been carrying the torch for the Indian River Lagoon up in Tallahassee. Because of a whole lot of reasons. I didn't get up there this year and walk the hallways like I normally do, but I've been in regular communication as she tries to get state funding for Indian River Lagoon specific projects. And I want to just recognize the fact that, not only Senator Mayfield, but all of our electeds up there have the lagoon as a priority, and they're working hard to keep us, both in the appropriation side and also watching carefully with policy as that moves through. So with that, I'll just end and, congratulate you for rolling through a very, very long agenda in a really short time. Any questions? Oh, one other thing is a request. Our annual report is out. Kathy said to take copies. I would very much like to do what I did pre-COVID, and that is come to see each of your commissions, councils, and do an update on the 2021-22 year. And so as you can schedule me in to come see your commissions, let me know. And Kathy just gave me, we still need to cover 12L, which is the EPA 5-year performance evaluation, and that's a quick one. We are being audited like we do every 5 years for programmatic delivery and for our financial security. And so we will see this 5-year review happening the week of your next meeting. And so the EPA is going to come down on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We'll be doing site visits, which you will all get an invitation to. Chris, you probably remember we did one with them 5 years ago down on the island. We really would like you to attend those if you can. With only 3 days, we're going to have to hand pick probably something in the north, something in the south. If we do one stormwater, we may do one septic to sewer. We'll see what they want. But they will actually be in front of you as part of the agenda to give you their preliminary findings. They're going to talk to our boards, get out in the field, and the end product of this 5-year review process And it's not going to go badly because we pay really close attention to performance. But there are NEPs that have lost their funding because of these 5-year performance evaluations. EPA takes performance seriously, but I want you to make sure you've got that week. If you can block some time and just hold it open, we love to have you on one of these field trips to engage with EPA. It'll be headquarters, it'll be Region 4, and it will be the executive director of one of our NEPs out in California, the Santa Monica Bay, will sit on that review committee as an EPA director. So that's all I have. Have I forgotten anything else? Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah, good idea.
So we have touched every agenda item, and it's, gosh, not even 11:30. I think that's a record.
It's definitely a record. Good job.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
before somebody else jumps on it, this is really short notice, but if you could find time in your calendar, February 22nd, we're having a water quality workshop in Volusia County, and I'd love to find a way to include you if you could come up and do a report then. It's also a council meeting day, so you could kill 2 birds with 1 stone in one meeting. You don't have to come to both.
Okay, I'll touch base with you. I'm thinking I had something on the 22nd, but I can rearrange some stuff. So I'll get back to you on that. That'd be great. That's all I have except for your reports. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I know I don't have to say it to this board or to these people, but you certainly are a blessing to our organization.
Yes.
Okay, council member reports. We'll start with Chris.
The Board of County Commissioners, move forward with additional funding for substantial water quality projects. So we're going to be taking old neighborhoods and turning them into stormwater projects, as somebody had mentioned earlier, about kind of like a neighborhood STA. Those are underway. And I want to thank everybody who came to the Taylor Creek Dredge event there. It's pretty impressive process by which they do the hydraulic dredging. And we actually, because of the conversation, we're talking about the idea of actually putting a pump, permanent pump, in that canal, or not the canal, but the creek, for continuous dredging and removing muck from that system, because the C-25 and Fort Pierce Farms dumps into that creek, and we have the sediments that come through with it, and of course the negative contaminants that go with that as well. I will share that my personal experience at the spoil site, when we were watching the effluent come back into the spoil site, the sulfuric, hydrofluoric, whatever it was, it stunk really bad. And it actually affected me. I have COPD from years when I used to fly in the airlines when they had smoking. And so the hydrogen sulfide, thank you, I had to find it, it was in there somewhere, really affected me. So it was pretty bad. And because we had that opportunity, our public works folks and the engineering are actually going to expand that site to increase that opportunity for the spoil site. So, but I just wanted to thank everybody who was able to make it, and it's a great project. And we had to take it down, demobilize because of the manatees. So we'll probably get back in place by April. When is the EPA coming?
It's going to be May, the week of our board meeting in May.
Okay, because if that's a project that is back underway, if it's something that you would like to consider, again, we could have those folks have that conversation to assist if that's something you'd think.
No, that'd be great. EPA likes, and they're on the call watching, they like big equipment, and seeing something happen. So that'd be great.
Well, the fact that we have a 3.5 mile continuous tube that goes from the actual spoil site to from the dredge site to the spoil site is pretty impressive. So, but thank you. I'm through.
Jeff.
Just a couple things real quick. I'm going to first piggyback on what he said, that it was a blessing to have you here. I know we all feel the same, but I got to tell you, watching you today, you look stronger than you have since I've been on this board. You're growing hair. And now
it's
you're going to
dark.
have to either schedule a haircut or decide on dreads, or I don't know what you're going to do. It's just, you are a blessing, and it's a blessing to see you doing well. You're a warrior. Yeah, glad to see you looking so good. Just a couple of quick things. One was the water quality workshop that we're going to do February 22nd. I'm also trying to get Dr. Pierce to come up to talk a little bit about low-impact development. And he's made a proposal to actually do training with developers instead of making them feel like we're giving them another unfunded mandate, to teach them how to incorporate low-impact developments into their plans. And he says he can show them how they can develop properties at less expense and end up with a higher quality project that they can sell for, for more money. So I'm hoping that we'll get to include him too. I'll just say real quick, because it was mentioned here that we were able to use ARPA money for some projects. Same for us in Volusia County. We actually were able to fund 10 new stormwater projects to reduce nutrient loads using ARPA money. So we were really excited. I mean, that just puts us ahead of schedule where we would have been able to be. And then the city of Oak Hill and Volusia County just on January 19th will break ground for a septic to sewer project. And I have to mention that that's a collaboration between the city of Oak Hill, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, the Indian River Lagoon Council, and the St. John's Water Management District. So a lot of everybody's working together, and that's what it's going to take. And then lastly, I'll just mention that we also celebrated the Shuck and Share program, which probably everybody does. We kind of highlighted that for the benefit of the public. And we also decided, I'm working with the county manager and of course with the people at Marine Discovery Center, Chad, and now that the project's been in place for a while, to fine tune it, upgrade it, because one of the things that we all have learned now about Umbra luganensis is that it's tough and it's here. But the science is now telling us that it can go into a resting stage for up to 7 years. And so we're looking at ways that we can maybe upgrade, fine-tune the Shuck and Share instead of heaping, spreading them out, because we have the space. So we can spread them out to single file to where they all get solarized to kill, in hopes of killing it even in a resting stage, because it rests, you put it back in the water, and then it's just it can repopulate the lagoon. So, but it's a great program. We're happy to have it, and we're just going to look at ways to be extra cautious that we're not introducing anything, because oysters come from everywhere in Shuck and Share. They come from all over the southeast, and so there's always a danger of bringing in something else. So it's a pleasure for me to be on this council, and honestly, it's a pleasure to be working with our staff at Volusia County. They're very progressive at looking at ways to improve water quality. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Joe. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Turn your mic on.
No, it's on. It just wasn't talking towards it.
Push the button so it's green.
Oh.
It's got to go green?
Yes.
No wonder they won't hear you.
That's it.
All right, well, I do have some words I'd like to say. First and foremost, I think Dwayne DeFries will be able to edify this. When the concept of the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program came forward to Indian River County, I would say that I was probably not the fiercest proponent. Would that be fair to say? Correct. Yes, I think
But you were one of those guys.
bureaucracy came up in the discussion. And again, if you ask 7 scientists to address a scenario, you might get 11 outcomes. And, you know, we did have a big challenge at the time. Times were different. I will say that over the course, and this might have justified Susan Adams' great attendance record. I was back at home, although Sebastian is my home. But I was doing other things, and in looking at this and seeing so many of the results over the course, Dwayne, you're the bomb. Thank you. This team, the staff, the committees, things are getting generated, funding is getting processed, and we're getting to solution codes. I didn't say we got a solution. It's going to be a long time. I know that. I don't think anybody in this room thinks that we have a quick solution. But the solution codes are happening, and that's key to the success. In addition, Doug Benite made a comment earlier about information. We have one lagoon, we should have one source. And that's only going to come, and that's coming from, I was the former spokesman for the sheriff for many years. And it had to be done logistically with a coordination of proper communication, or we can say it very quickly, give them a buffet and they will eat. And if you give them a buffet, they will know that you are the one source. It will happen. They will gravitate. They will look at the others for a second opinion. They will look at others for supporting opinions. But you will become the sole source, just out of customary usage, by delivering a buffet on a regular basis. And I think that's very important, and that's key. As far as Indian River County, we're doing a few projects. About mid-March, the Indian River Lagoon plan will be close to finalization, and we hope to have that presented. We've been working on the project for the Lost Tree. I think it's key. Historically, for many years, we were bashing some Brazilian pepper trees and calling it a day, and making some firewood and maybe perhaps making them appear good. Now we're looking at total invasive species eradication, and then planting vegetative, Florida-friendly, island-friendly plantings that will not be superseded by invasive species. And there is a maintenance plan, and that's being rolled out now. As far as when you open the doors, just a little bit east of here, there are 201 septic tanks being eradicated. The main line for the sewer, the North County Sewer Project, is happening, and that is along our Indian River Lagoon. So that's key. The Jones Pier project, which was a restorative project for the old Jones Farm and docking station, has become more of an ecological tool. And I want to thank the estuary program for financially supporting one of the key elements, and the project is fairly well completed. If anyone wants to see, we can arrange a tour, but it would be a one-on-one private tour, as we are not open to the public yet. There might be a few more month delay. There's been a little bit of a change, but I'll tell you what, one of the key things that has grabbed me was the Archimedes Pump that is bringing water and creating a whole new estuary to the site. And it is just so fascinating to see all of the creatures coming back and coming into the environment. In addition, we're proud to say that, again, as you've watched it grow, the 5 nitrogen and phosphorus projects are continuing to show great success and tonnage, not poundage, tonnage for removal of nutrients from our lagoon. Is it going to happen? It's going to happen. It's going to happen sooner because this exists. The National Estuary Program exists for Indian River Lagoon. Thank you.
You're welcome. Jason?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've heard a lot about septic to sewer projects, so I think it is worth noting that under this governor's leadership, approximately $68 million has been awarded in grants to counties adjacent to the Indian River Lagoon for septic conversion to sewer. It's targeting about 8,000 septic tanks, and the removal of those tanks will result in about 130,000 pounds of nutrients being removed from the Indian River Lagoon a year. On the EPA performance evaluation, I understand EPA is on the call today. They're joining us. Working for a state regulatory agency that is regularly audited by EPA, it might help to have Aaron or myself participate in that and just join in our federal partners, and we can for sure be there in May. And lastly, I just wanted to end with a story I think that Kathy might appreciate. When I first moved to Florida and into West Palm Beach in 2003, I had to turn in my jersey plates, the two of them, the front and the back, for a Florida plate. And I went to the DMV, and they showed me all the specialty plates they had, and I said, that snook plate looks pretty cool. I had heard about snook. I didn't know much about them growing up in New Jersey, but I thought that'd be a neat plate. So I picked the plate, and after I picked the plate, I saw Indian River Lagoon on the plate. I didn't even know what the Indian River Lagoon was. So I still have the plate today. Fast forward 20 years, and here I am doing regulatory work that impacts the Indian River Lagoon and sitting on a board for the Indian River Lagoon. So if that wasn't foreshadowing, I don't know what was. But good to see the new plate, and thank you guys for all your work. That's all I have.
Good story, even if you are from Jersey. I'm from Jersey too, by the way. I just wanted to point out that recently Brevard County completed its 50th project since we passed the lagoon tax back in 2016. That project was $2.6 million, and it was a stormwater project that will have great benefit to the Indian River Lagoon. And to edify what you were saying about Indian River County, as I recall, having been on that board at that time, we didn't have an Indian River County representation on this board because you guys abdicated, and so we wound up, Sebastian City stepped up and took that position until you guys came to your senses. How's that for being blunt?
Well, I appreciate that. It was a very difficult decision. Young guy from, I was younger at the time. It was back. And looking at it, I thought that we were on the right track. And I felt that we can get it done. In this scenario, there are no islands.
Correct. All right. This meeting is adjourned.